is Trump's Russia ultimatum, which he shortened from 50 days down to 10 or 12, it's down to about 8 now. Is that a smart move? Does making Putin look like he's being bullied by Trump a smart move? Because that's what it looks like, right? I think not. I think it's the wrong move. I think it's not a smart move at all. Um, Russians are already wary of Trump. Russians are, not that I care about that, but you got to look at your disposition of your adversary on the other side. What's more, the Russian economy is entering recession or close to it now. So adding more sanctions, it may or may not be that big of a deal at this point. Um, so when U.S. says to Russia, uh, if you don't come to a ceasefire, you don't initiate a ceasefire, we're going to add more sanctions. It doesn't really move the ball, I don't think. And what's more, to Russia, the U.S. is fighting a proxy war against Russia. And they're not entirely wrong either for thinking that. We are in fact, funding and arming Ukraine and have been doing so since the outset of the war, if not before. So there's a rational expectation that Russia doesn't entirely trust the U.S. at all, and that obviously Putin cannot afford to be seen to be bullied by Trump into saying, "Well, gee, you're right, Donald. Let's come to the table." It's not a workable equation. Okay, so what's more, Trump has gotten the EU to increase funding on their defense budgets up to 5% of GDP, and Russia knows that that's going to be aimed at them. It's not aimed at the U.S. It's aimed at Russia. The beneficiary is going to be Ukraine, and Russia's going to be harmed by that. So now a new war of words has emerged with Dmitry Medvedev. He's the second security deputy chairman, whatever, of Russia, and a former president of Russia, by the way, too. And he said, look, threatening Russia increases the risk of war with Russia, he said to Trump. He also said recently, I think it was yesterday, he said, Russia is not Iran. So don't think you could just fly over here and disable us. And by the way, Medvedev also invoked the Cold War term dead hand, which is a system, kind of a secondary strike capability. In other words, missile launches would happen whether or not Russia had endured a first strike from the U.S. or something like that. So invoking these Cold War images of nuclear threats, nuclear rhetoric, dead hand, that's the wrong direction. Now, what is interesting here is that Trump the argument, the war of words has morphed from Trump to Putin to Trump to Medvedev, which may be a good thing in a way. I don't know what the strategy is there. It might leave Putin some negotiating room, like, okay, let me pull back my attack dog, as it were. It may give him some optics there. I don't know. But what I do know is that having Lindsey Graham say, don't underestimate the U.S. president. So it's all about, there's all of these proxies and all this rhetoric, which doesn't need to happen at this point. I think if Trump just said to Putin, look, let's figure something out. I know he has said that already, and Putin has said, well, these are my conditions. I think the reality is that because Russia has been at war with Ukraine since at least 2014, which under Obama, they took Crimea at that time. I think some of those are going to be a fait accompli. And Ukraine, if we want the war to stop, if we want to be some kind of peace there, then there's got to be an acknowledgement that Ukraine has changed hands. I'm not a big fan of Russia taking Crimea, but I'm also not a big fan of the war spreading. And so I think that's a bigger concern. I really don't have a hell of a lot of love for Zelensky, and I think the Ukrainian government is as corrupt as it comes. If they were involved with Joe Biden, well, then they're corrupt. Okay, so I don't think we should be playing brinksmanship with Ukraine. I think if Trump was, I think a better plan would be for Trump to say, look, we're going to work something out, and Zelensky, you're going to have to accept it. Either you're going to come to the table with us or not, but you're going to have to cut a deal. And I think that would be smarter than this nuclear threat rhetoric that we're seeing now and these ultimatums in terms of the sanctions and so forth. So that's what I think. Let me know what you think. Be sure, if you like this content, to subscribe to the channel and comment and share. All right, thanks. See you next time.